Wow. Serenade to a Soul Sister. Welcome everybody to the Jake Feinberg Show. Live here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And what a blessing and an honor to be joined by a beautiful cat and a great musician, James Singleton. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Great to be with you again.
It's great to be with you, brother. I just wanted to ask you, you said when you lead your own bands, sometimes the cats in the band, they go about, you may think it's time for a ballad, but they sort of deny that. You know, do you find that, like, is that something that how do you handle that when you want to go somewhere and you are able to let go of control or put your ego aside and let them say their piece? I mean, isn't that why you bring in certain sidemen to work with you?
Yes. My philosophy at band leading has evolved at a glacial pace, but in the past year it's really come together the way I want it to. And what I do is I hire people that are band leader, composer, improvisers. So I have complete trust in them. Now, only for the past couple of months, I've come up with this notion of a narrative arc for the set. And these are extra musical ideas, philosophical ideas, things that I want my music in some way to reflect. And to that end, I create a map for myself. And sometimes me and one other member of the band will be aware of this. Because I don't want these great players to be in some way intimidated or limited by them, the idea.
Inhibited by them?
Yeah, I just don't want them to. It's a similar philosophy that I apply to titling my tunes, my compositions. I hate the idea of something very specific. I like specificity, but I like ambiguity because that's a reflection of my life. So I have a song called Dyke Finger. And, you know, what is that? You know, well, I was after Katrina and I created this piece of music that starts very chaotically and improvises and goes around different worlds and then emerges in a very hopeful thing, which was kind of a big part of my experience of the flood. And I called it Dyke Finger because I'm thinking of the little kid with his finger in the dike, saving a tiny effort like my composition, saving the larger thing, you know.
In the last year, you said things have come together quite a bit for you as a leader, but can you talk to peeps out there about the struggles you've had becoming what are the qualities of leadership that you've had to cultivate?
Everybody's different. For me, it was being a bassist and in a very interactive and supportive role for most of my career. My tendency as a leader was to defer to the needs of the group. When you're in a group and improvising, that's what you must do, even if you're the leader. So for me, the biggest growing the biggest growth process was saying, no, I have a direction that I want this set to go. And I'm going to set it and stick to it unless somebody successfully subverts it, which sometimes happens.
And exactly, I was curious. You said it in our radio interview, and I said, someone like Singles, like you wouldn't. To me, that you wouldn't want that happening a lot. But if it's cool if you let them go. I mean, I think that's what Miles did a lot.
That's Miles.
People at Coltrane would come up.
Useless
Coltrane kept. It was all nonverbal too, because he would come up and say, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?" And he would just Miles would turn his back on Coltrane.
Right.
He just said because he wanted him to figure it out for himself, and I think that's in this very verbose time that we live. We hang on lots of words, and the leaders that you grew under the tutelage of the blues masters, and a lot of it was unspoken. Those cats didn't want to talk much to begin with.
Or they would talk, and the talk was even if it was specific, the specific words they were using
Right.
were not literal. Johnny V and I played with Mose Allison for 35 years. And when we first started, he had a list of rules. And it was even written down, though I don't recall ever seeing the written list.
What were some of the? I like this. What were some of the rules? No, this after
he
that.
said no major thirds, unless you're leading to a minor third. No hi-hat on 2 and 4. Really absurd things. But I think, was he really thinking of those things? Maybe he just wanted you to think about the music and think about what it required. For me, it was a big struggle because I was 22 years old when I started with him, and I'm trying to identify myself as a musician. I came up in the 70s. I came up listening to Hendrix, the Beatles, yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, then Miles, Herbie, Wayne, Coltrane. So it was all about big personalities, very identifiable musical personalities. And I was trying to find mine. And when you play with Mose Allison, that's not your job. Your job is to play Mose Allison music. So you have to reconcile the two. And one of my great teachers in that regard is Herlin Riley.
You're the second. I can't believe you. Yeah, go ahead, continue.
Well, we were on this gig with a lounge pianist, and he'd gone from A-list Broadway, New York dancer,
Right.
top,
Dancer.
and had a career-ending injury, and started playing lounge piano. And every song was in G, and he didn't know the bridge to any songs. But he had great time. He swung like a bat. But I said, years later, I said, Herlin, because Herlin did that gig for a while. I did it exactly once, and that was enough. And years later, I said, Herlin, how did you deal with that? That guy he can only play in one key. He doesn't know the bridge of the songs. He said, Jim, I had no choice. I had 3 kids already, man. That was the gig. And I said, well, how did you handle it? He said, I figured out how to give him exactly what he wanted and still shed my shit as I played. Be it mentally or very soft, whatever. Give him exactly what he needs for that gig and simultaneously grow my own strengths.
Well,
So-
I mean.
I tried
does
to apply
fall-
that to Mose. I gotta. All right, roots, baby. No major thirds, but still somehow
Giving him
collect for myself what would become myself musically.
So I want you to riff on. I was transcribing my second interview with Julian Priester, and he was talking.
Oh yeah, I
Very.
read some of that.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I mean he. Almost to.
I saw him with Wandishi. I saw that band.
You saw this band, so you understand this collective of thinking as one. But I before I get to that, I want to ask you about how you have survived as an artist as opposed to a musician. I mean, what you're talking about with Herlin, he's an artist. What he was keeping for his own internal integrity was his artistic integrity.
Yes.
You are the same way. And once you talk to cats out there, how you have survived and even thrived as an artist and not a musician?
Well, at that particular period when I blew off that gig that he's continued to do for, I'm sure, months and possibly
Right,
years.
yeah, right.
I didn't have any children. I didn't have a wife. I was easily making my rent every night. This was before the gutting of the middle class. The union was still very strong. All the unions were strong. You know, there were a lot of unskilled laborers with house notes, families. You know,
And there was a lot of hope too.
There
'Cause
was hope.
It mirrored societal. The
oh.
music mirrored society, and there was a
New
lot
Orleans was a 24-hour music town. Tuesday night, 2:30 a.m., Tipitina's packed with crazy people dancing to crazy music. Finally, all right, last call, you got to get out of here. It's 3 a.m. Everybody goes down to Bourbon Street, the Absinthe Bar. Great improvised music till 6 a.m. You really want to hurt yourself? Simply drive out to Fat City, which is an area in Metairie, a suburb of New Orleans. The band started at 6 a.m. and went to 1 p.m. And I'm talking 3 horns, 3 singers, uniforms, choreography, just crazy. You don't feel like sleeping? Go back to Bourbon Street. It starts at noon. So it was raining money for live entertainment. It was absolutely.
So you could make a living being true to yourself as an artist.
I sobered up just in time to acquire a house. I got my property, and I paid for that. I paid it off about halfway through the beginnings of the gutting of the middle class, the end of the union.
It's like early 80s kind of Reagan kind of stuff?
Yes.
Just tearing it.
Right to work took over.
Right to work.
Yeah.
A right to work state. Yeah, I live in a right to work state.
I was 25, 28 maybe.
Right, so you never, in Singles' career, that's your nickname, Singles.
Okay.
In your career, you've never been like, oh, I got to go hire myself out and play this funk gig tonight. And I got to go play. I mean, you know.
For the most part, you're right. When I first moved to New Orleans, my employer was a guy named Gatemouth Brown. He was a master musician. He forgot more about playing the upright bass than I knew. And he told me plenty. He had a lot to say to me. But instantly, I wanted to quit his band because I heard Johnny Vidacovich, I heard Angel Troskler, I heard Lon Price, I heard Earl Turbenton, I heard Henry Butler, I heard the Neville Brothers, I heard Zig, I heard Ellis Marcellus, James Black. These are the people I wanted to play with. And to that end, I gave him 2 weeks' notice after only working with him for 4 months, the man who actually brought me to town. And he wouldn't hear it. He said, "You can't quit. You can't quit." And
you quit.
Well, no, it took months. Finally, I said, "No, I am quitting." And I was able, and it was during the summer, and summers in New Orleans could be really rough, still can be. And I starved.
To make a living, you mean?
Oh.
Yeah, because it's pretty humid to begin with.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I was living on hot dogs. I was, it was bad. And I ended up taking a terrible road gig just to survive.
With another blues cat?
No.
I don't want to get sidetracked. Go straight ahead. Continue. This is important.
Well, Larry Siebert is a great composer, pianist, band leader, arranger, accompanist, and he and I met on Gatemouth's gig. And I think we might have quit simultaneously. And we both ended up hungry and went on this lame gig. But it strengthened our connection. So
I love it. What happened one time? I love this is fantastic, man. It's absolutely vital. I want also, before I forget, Aretha Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about her impact on you. Just the idea, even of most importantly, the cats like Jerry Jamot, Chuck Rainey, Bernard Purdy, all dear fans of the Jake Feinberg show, like how they cooked the groove on those tunes.
Yes, but none of those are my favorite Aretha.
Tell me what your favorite Aretha is.
My favorite Aretha, unambiguously, is Soul 69.
Explain.
Soul 69, Aretha was on CBS Records, and they were grooming her as the next Billie Holiday, the next Ella Fitzgerald, jazz. And to that end, they made some sides which you could get, and I don't have, but it just didn't work. She went to Atlantic, Wexler,
Arif
Mardin, those guys, they just saw it. They sensed what it was. And she changed the world. She rocked all of our worlds. But in 1969, said, man, what about that jazz? You know, and you need to hear Soul 69 because it, I mean, if she had never done it, she would still be the hippest singer of my life. But that record is with a big band, Snooky Young on lead, Ron Carter, Grady Tate. It's just swinging like nothing you've ever
That's fantastic. What a great rhythm section that is.
Yeah, you gotta hear Ramblin', Bring It On Home to Me, River's Invitation. It's everything on that record is genius. That's my favorite.
Did
Aretha
Gatemouth
record.
talk to you about gospel music, gospel bass at all?
Gatemouth? No. Gatemouth, when I was with Gatemouth, he was very adamantly narrow in his musical tastes. There were two kinds of music that he would admit he liked. His own and that of Count Basie. And a bunch of things happened to Gatemouth.
That's unbelievable,
it's fun.
dude.
Yeah, anything else was weedhead music.
Weedhead.
And therefore trafe, just stay away. And of course, 2 years after I quit, Gaith had turned into a weedhead and was, I'm sure, listening to anything.
He was just envious at that time.
But he was just a...
But so I want to ask you this, because you brought this up in the interview before. Cats were like, yo, you know Long Tall Sally? And you're like, I don't know that one. And they're like, do you want to play that guitar or do you want to wear it?
Yeah.
And you referenced this idea of the audience wanting a visceral reaction. But
no, I believe what I said was the club owner wanted to see a visceral reaction from the crowd from what we were doing, or else get out of here.
Right, but so I go to this quote from Johnny V, talking about what is your intention as an audience member? Are you there to just hang out, pick up girls?
Oh, when he goes to it.
No, I'm talking about the idea of Long Tall Sally. That's just a cover tune, and I'm talking about the music you're going to play tonight, which is completely, basically improvised.
It varies. With this trio, we have a pretty vast repertoire. We were incorrigible demons in the late 70s and early 80s. We were in a great band that still plays called Astral Project. And we fell into enormous opportunities. Just to give you a small idea, I'm sure the three of us accompanied Nat Adderley, Rusty Kershaw, and Charlie Rich. You see,
that's serious palette right there.
So
that's
we
palette,
just
man.
really broad, anything that we could do.
Charlie
and
Rich.
Then we played with Gatemouth. Gatemouth was paying so poorly a few years after I quit. His manager called me, man, the band is on strike. They won't play. We're supposed to play at Tipitina's tonight in 2 hours. Can you help me? And I said, yeah. It'll cost you. So it was Gatemouth Brown, David Torkanowsky, Tony DeGrati, Johnny Vidacovich, and me. And I wish I had a recording of that, because that shit was burning. And I said, Gate, it could be this way every night. You just got to share the wealth, and that was not going to happen. But yeah, like this trio, we played a lot of, we collaborated with the Mardi Gras Indians.
Which one? With Monk
and Bo.
The Bo Dollar Senior?
Yes.
When did you do that? Well, how did that
Astral
shit?
Project did a concert with them, and then Johnny V and I went to Europe with them.
Wow.
The three of us played.
Yeah, that was a revelatory thing, because when Bobby McFerrin called up Dave Grusz and was like, yo, he was trying to get some tips because he thought he was going to be a Hollywood songwriter. But how did he wind up in New Orleans? And he was crashing on your couch.
Johnny V got a gig at the Telluride Jazz Festival, which was a very serious jazz festival. The year we played it, they had Stan Getz with his own band, Phil Woods with his own band, Pharoah Sanders with his own band, Dave Friesen and John Stoll, Chick
Ah, Phil.
Corea and Gary Burton, McCoy Tyner solo, Lightning Hopkins, who Johnny V and I played with. It was
You got tapes of that?
Pat Metheny was at the peak of when his first band came out. They played, so it was just a huge deal. Bobby was there. Bobby lived in Denver, I believe, at the time. So he just went up there. He heard us play. We talked. I can't remember if he sat in. But yeah, he must have sung, and everybody knew that he was a genius. He had been doing solo piano and singing. He wanted to get out from behind the piano and be the guy that stands in front of the
You
band.
can be a front man.
Yeah. And we just straight up invited him to New Orleans, and he came.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
And we ended up doing several nights a week for many months on Bourbon Street. He could instantly internalize the most complicated songs that Astral Project did. He taught us some of his repertoire, stuff that Torkanowsky and Johnny and I still play to this day. It was an absolute ball playing with him. And then he started playing with people all over town. I think he collaborated with Zigaboo. I remember there was a band with Ricky Sebastian, and me and Mazakowski. He's just straight up genius musician.
How do you? I just look at what the music you play. By and large, it's all music, and then it's either good or bad. That's a subjective thing.
I love what Jeff Albert said.
Well, I just
said there are two kinds of music: good music and bad music, and I happen to like both.
Well, and actually,
which is good for a professional.
That's a pretty hip thing.
Well, if you're a professional, you need if there's something wrong, you need to say, what can I do to make it better? That's the only consideration you have.
But what is the stratification of music, the labeling of music? It was much more. I have these burning live shows from the Jazz Workshop on WBCN from Boston, and they're talking about pure Prairie League into Grover Washington Jr.
Sure.
It was insane. There was no labels. It was,
well,
and so I'm just curious about how you feel, if you feel that the
categorization is a tyranny.
And explain why.
Because so much of the most interesting music comes when it's rhythms, European harmonies, Afro-Cuban music is very much that way. Brazilian music, very similar to ragtime. This classical form mated with African rhythms. When I was a kid, when I was my daughter's age, 10 years old, they had something called the Top 20. And you turn on the AM radio and the Top 20. And the Top 20 contained the Beatles, Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, a ton of stupid novelty music. You see, it was all mixed together. Over the following 10 years, into the 70s, it became very stratified. And this was, the feeling was targeting audiences. And, the black music needs to be on the black station, and the white music and the country music needs to be over here. No more Buck Owens with the Beatles, even though they did each other's songs.
Right, and so over time, because you could say that you guys tonight, I would just say that you guys are playing spiritual music. But if some people would refer to it as jazz, but if you ask people what their definition of jazz is, you get 20 different answers.
Yeah.
To me, it is, well, like you said, it was the merging of African rhythms with European harmonies. And at a time when that was merging, before, what kind of electronics did you, a couple people have commented already about how effortless you did the looping and playing,
It's a work in progress.
But talk about the earliest gadgets that you had, because my favorite time in music is when electronics were just beginning to sort of trickle in, in the early 70s. Like, what were you doing? What was your first birthing of electronic madness? Because now it's just, it does look effortless, and and the grooves are hypnotic.
It's mainly an attempt to expand the textural aspect of the music. Most of the music, a lot of the music that I listen to is classical music, orchestral music, because the complexity of human emotion can have a more nuanced reflection musically if there's a variety of textures. And a lot of today's younger musicians are extremely aware of that. And some of it doesn't have the dynamic quality that I expect from my music. But I think one of the records that comes to mind is Midnight Vultures by Beck. And the textural palette is so broad. And I was listening to it one time, and Mazikowski said, "Oh man, that synthesizer, that's dated. That sounds like 1973." And I said, "Well, but check out the context. It's, you know, he's pulling textures from many different eras and making them relevant." So it's just, plus it's bang for your buck. And I'd have to say that two of my biggest influences in this regard are Mike Dillon and Skerrick. As I started playing gigs with them with some regularity after Katrina. And Skerrick had a very nuanced and broad spectrum of sounds that he created electronically. And Mike used electronics on his vibes, but just the fact that he's such a genius trap drummer, and the tabla, and the vibraphone, and the effects, and the other percussion instruments, these guys are bringing a lot to the table. I'm showing up with a bass. And I said, man, I think I need to get the trumpet out of the case and get some other things happening.
I dig.
Now, when I made my quartet record here at Snug Harbor, and I got Mike and Skerrick on it, the initial inspiration for that was the way Mike played a fast tempo. We're playing swing, and I had a board tape, and he just put in this blast beat. And I went, oh my God, no one else is doing that. You know, I want that on my record. And
he was playing trap set.
Yeah. Well, he's playing both. He's playing everything at once.
I saw that in Mount Hood.
Then
actually.
Skerrick shows up, and he was a little under the weather, and he didn't bring any of his electronics. And I was just, oh God, he didn't bring that shit. And I remember 3 weeks later, I'm listening to the Roughs at home, and my wife said, who is that sax player? I said, that's Skerrick without any electronics. She said, oh my God. I said, I know. He's just total killer. He's kind of my model, because the electronics are just a further flowering of this incredible range of sounds and textures that he gets out of the saxophone without anything. So, post-production, we took some liberties with him a little bit, but not too much. And he didn't squawk, so. And we added reverbs.
Well, Skerrick, I just became hip. You know, it's coalescing all this brother and sisterhood.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
It's a small world.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you as we wrap up here. I mean, you've been. When did you first? How did you connect with Johnny V?
Johnny V was when I moved to New Orleans. I was told that Johnny V was the greatest drummer in town, and within.
Who told you that?
Someone
just everybody was saying it was Johnny was the best drummer.
Everybody.
Classic.
But what I discovered was that Johnny V was probably the strongest musician in town. And best is a crazy word, but I don't know. Johnny V plus humans equals music. And if you can't sound good with him, you might just think about giving up.
What was it like to be? What was the first gig you guys had?
He hired me. Well, first of all, we were both hired. I remember the first time I heard him. It's confusing order now, but I remember one of the first times I heard him was a duo, and one of his arms was in a cast. He had a broken arm.
He had a broken arm.
Playing a duo gig with
right.
one arm.
Vince Ladiano used to do that with Cal. He was a bad. So Johnny's playing with one hand.
Yeah, Johnny has such a touch.
Yeah.
He would sit in, and you wouldn't want that guy he was sitting in on to come back, because he'd get a totally different sound out of the cymbal. It's just magic.
What's the future of what is the significance? How will the significance of music change in the future? It's changed so much since when you first hit the road. It had a different meaning, What I'm saying is there's a lot of more distractions now. Not necessarily at a club like Snug Harbor, but what is the future of human music together being made on the bandstand?
I'm a born optimist, and I just have always felt that more and more people are going to catch the curiosity that drives my music, and be thrilled to hear something new, and to have emotions reflected in different ways than they have it before.
Can you give an example?
Hopefully tonight I'll give an example. But okay, I love the newest Lewis Cole tune I heard on YouTube, and I've listened to his music, and it seems very static dynamically. It seems very rich harmonically and grooving and good rhythms. A lot of the younger guys do not have my same need for extreme dynamics. I need that.
I need it too, as a listener.
That's what I get with Johnny V and Mr. Torkanowsky, and Larry and Mike Dillon, and Stanton. I feel like Stanton and Mike, I hope I've been an influence on them, because they go on the road with their punk rock band or the funk band, and they're hitting hard. Then they come to Snug Harbor, I'm like, baby, I turned the amp off just to get you to have a wider range, because this is human experience, and when it reflects the human experience, it's more interesting.
I don't know if do you want to finish with a little tune?
Yeah, I'll play a little bit.
Yeah, play a little tune. Pray for the children. James Singleton, thank you so much for being part of the program, man.
Thank you, Jake.
We'll be back in a little bit. Everybody hang loose.